I don't know how you can't be bought in with this team. This team hasn't played close to their best game offensively yet. Right now, with the way their season has started, I think the Bills and Bengals are opposite of what we thought they were going to be because of the poor quarterback play and the aging offensive line. I would personally say it's the worst situation in all of football. The Ravens, to me, are the absolute #1 threat to the Chiefs right now.
So in this video, I revisit the state of the AFC through Week 5 with Garrett of Football Analysis, and the scary truth is the Chiefs are just getting started, yet somehow are still undefeated. However, there are some teams on the rise that could potentially get in the way of the three-peat, and even though I highly doubt it, let's talk about it. But first, how about those? What's up, everybody? I'm here with Garrett from Football Analysis. I had you on like 2 or 3 months ago. We talked the state of the AFC heading into the season. Well, I figured it would be a great time to revisit this conversation through 5 weeks of the NFL season heading into week 6. The Chiefs are on a bye week. But I would love to get some of your updated thoughts. 2.5 months ago or whenever it was that we talked, there was a few teams that we talked about that were true contenders, and would love to kind of revisit the conversation, see if anything has changed for you based on the records now, injuries, including the Chiefs and their injuries. So let's just jump right into it. Let me ask you this first and foremost. We basically said, hey, if the Chiefs stay healthy, they are true contenders in the AFC. They're probably making it to the AFC Championship game. Even the Super Bowl would be a highly likely probability. Are you still in that mindset, even though Isaiah Pacheco's out for a couple months, Hollywood Brown injured on the first preseason play, out for the season, Rashee Rice now out for the season? What are your thoughts on the Chiefs in spite of their injuries and how they're looking so far? They are undefeated. Would love to hear your thoughts as a Vikings fan who's also undefeated.
Yeah, so first off, if you would have told me back when we recorded that we were entering week 6, both of our teams have byes this week. If you would have said that we're both 5-0, there is no chance I would have believed you. But what I will say about the Chiefs is I don't know how you can't be bought in with this team, because this team is 5-0, and I know everybody gets sick of the Chiefs, they get Chiefs fatigue, especially back-to-back Super Bowl titles, and then the fact that they're 5-0 off of back-to-back Super Bowl titles. But this team hasn't played close to their best game offensively yet. And as you mentioned, Cole, there's several injuries already, 3 big injuries on the offensive side of the football. But even within that, they're just warming up like they did against the Saints. They played a pretty solid game against the Saints. They had over 400 yards of offense, which was a pleasant change to see versus what we saw through some of the first couple of games. And they put up over 25 points, which was also nice to see. I think that was the first time they did since back in week 1 against the Ravens. But this team hasn't played close to their best game yet. And like you said, they're still 5-0. So I don't know how you couldn't be fully bought in with this team.
Well, I am feeling pretty good, all things considered. It's a little weird to see the Chiefs. They're moving the ball. They're pretty efficient, but they lack explosive plays, run and pass. Like if you go look at the stats, they have one of the lowest explosive play rate in the entire NFL. In spite of that, they're moving the ball really well. They're just kind of like grinding you to death. Their identity has shifted. They are now like top half in run play percentage and in the 20-somethings now in pass play percentage. There's definitely been a shift. Mahomes leads the league in INTs. It's just weird. It's a weird Chiefs offense, but they're so rounded and they're moving the ball. The only thing I feel like they need to fix ASAP would be the red zone touchdown percentage. They are 30th. Miami Dolphins and the Patriots are the only 2 teams worse. Does that concern you at all? Given that info? I
would say no for a couple of reasons. One, like you mentioned during the first part, is when you are out your top running back, you're out two of your 3 top receivers that you planned on, heading into the year. And the thing is you don't just show up week 1 and just say, all right, guys, let's go. I mean, they planned for Marquise Brown and Rashee Rice to be a part of the offense for months, for 4 or 5 months, and then to have those guys taken away. And I know Rashee played the first couple of games before getting hurt against the Chargers, but it's still a wrinkling out process. It's still an ironing out phase. And I think we are starting to see the great players in the league really, come into their own, like we expected to heading into the year. I mean, Joe Burrow had his best game of the year in week 5, and I don't think that's a coincidence. And I think we're going to see the best is still yet to come for Patrick. And the thing is, I know the Chiefs let Patrick Mahomes play in the preseason. Obviously, it's not like the preseason in the early to mid 2000s where guys would play, 2 quarters and they'd play a full half. But there's still this part of me that believes, well, if we're not playing since February and we're not playing since, in some guys' cases, week 18 of last year, and then we're playing maybe 5 or 6 live snaps and then going right into the regular season, there's going to be a big transition phase. And I think we've especially seen that with the 49ers receiver Brandon Ayuk, who held out all summer and then showed up and didn't play from the NFC Championship game until week 1. And that's not really talked about a lot, where it's, yes, these guys are professional athletes. Yes, they're obviously in the best shapes of 99.9% of the human population that they can't fathom. But there's also the human element and the fact that it's going to take some time to work these things out. So for the Chiefs, I wouldn't really worry about the red zone, especially when the defense is going to be as good as they are, and they have been phenomenal to start the year. And there's not really that pressure for Kansas City's offense the way that a team like Cincinnati's offense might have to worry about, because they're 31st in points allowed per game.
Yeah, and actually on that note, let's just dive into that. Let's dive into the Bengals. That was a team you said, hey, I think this is one of the teams that could be contenders to make it to the AFC Championship game. And then I said, well, hey, if the Chiefs don't make it to the Super Bowl, who's one of the couple of teams you could see making it? You mentioned the Bengals, which I didn't even think was really a hot take, not with a healthy Burrow. Well, he's healthy and they're freaking balling out. But their defense, just like you said, is on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. They are currently 1-4 and fighting for their playoff life already in week 5. What are your thoughts on the Bengals and how they're looking thus far? Do you think they're still a threat? I mean, it's kind of an uphill battle, but I'd love to hear your updated thoughts on them.
I think it would be ignorant to just say the Bengals are done. We don't have to worry about them. They're not going to be a threat at all. I still think they're going to get to the postseason. And to me, with the Bengals and with a quarterback like Joe Burrow, a receiver like Jamar Chase, and with the big playability that they can snap of the finger, go for a 60-yard touchdown, they are going to be all right. The big thing with the defense is, can we not even play like top 5 or 10? Can we just not give up 30 points per game? And like they did against the Ravens, can we not give up 500 yards of offense? Can we not give up 41 points in a game? Can we just be, again, maybe not even league average, but just can we be the 20th best defense, the 22nd best defense? And the thing with Cincinnati is their schedule will lighten up. Their final 4 games aren't too difficult. I was actually looking them up a little bit before we got on stream, and I wanted to just kind of go over their final 4 games, because Cincinnati's 1-4 right now, but their final 4 games are at Tennessee, home against Cleveland, home against Denver, and at Pittsburgh. And that's not, I mean, those aren't easy games by any means, but it's not at Kansas City, at Baltimore, at Houston, and then home against another division team, home against the Steelers to end the year. They're not 4 straight teams that you think might go to the Super Bowl. So I think there is a very real chance Cincy could win 3 out of 4 to end the year, maybe even all 4 in a row to end the year. And even right now, they play back-to-back games of at the Giants and at the Browns, and there's a big difference between 1-4 and 3-4. And I think if they get to 3-4, which they should, if they beat the Giants and Browns, and the Giants won't have Malik Neighbors in week 6, that was already confirmed this morning, I think the Bengals are going to be all right. But in terms of true championship threat, whether it's the Bengals, whether it's anybody really outside of the Chiefs, because I think they're the only team that's kind of earned this type of respect, generally speaking, I'm not going to buy into a team to go to the Super Bowl and have to win 3 straight road games in the playoffs.
Let's stick in the division here, because the Bengals, just what you said, my thoughts are pretty similar. Like, they always start slow, and they always, most of the time, as long as Burrow stays healthy, I feel like they find a way to claw their way back in the second half of the season. And I just looked at the 4 games you were talking about there. I mean, even the back half of their schedule doesn't look that insane. I'll pop it up on screen, but there's a lot of winnable games there for the Bengals. I do want to stay in the division, though. You mentioned the Browns could be a potential sneaky dark horse in the AFC if they have even just competent quarterback play. Well, the Browns are currently 1-4 like the Bengals, and they have had very, very, very below average, subpar quarterback play. What are your thoughts on the Browns through 5 weeks? And I'm assuming your thoughts on them have changed.
They have. And I actually have a video, a little spoiler coming out tomorrow about teams that need to rebuild. Cleveland is one of them. And I know people want to point to the $230 million elephant in the room, and I get it. But Cleveland's offensive line has not been good. They've had a couple of injuries up front. Joe Bitonio, who I don't think will get in the Hall of Fame, but Hall of very good player at his peak, is not the same player. He's 33 years old. Actually, I think today is his 33rd birthday. Anytime you get over that 30 mark as an offensive lineman, it's kind of a 50-50. You take it by year. Wyatt Teller's also getting up there in age, and Jedrick Wills, their left tackle, is an average player, I would say at best. I mean, you don't think of premier tackles. You certainly don't think of Jedrick Wills. Their offensive line isn't great. The receiving room of Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, and Elijah Moore, to me, I mean, I like Amari, but Amari has dropped several passes this year, and Jerry Jeudy and Elijah Moore, to me, are just two Jags, which are just a guy. I don't really think, I'm not fearful of Jerry Jeudy or Elijah Moore. And then now, if you want to get to Deshaun Watson, that situation all around is awful. We're at a point where the Haslams, the owners, are stepping in and basically saying, like Kevin Stefanski, you are going to have to figure it out with Deshaun Watson. We're not going to allow you to bench him because of the financial commitment we have to Deshaun, even though I think everybody thinks that Jameis Winston would give the team a better chance to win. But because of the financial commitment they have to Deshaun, that's going to hinder the team in terms of what they can actually do in the next few years without the contract. I mean, now the contract is a cap hit of $72 million next year, which is enormous. And if they were to actually cut him, it's something along the lines of $140 million dead cap. It is outrageous. The Browns situation right now, personally, I would say, because of the poor quarterback play and the aging offensive line, I would personally say it's the worst situation in all of football.
It's a pretty bad one, and that is why, this is a little switch of gears here, and then we'll jump back to AFC teams. This is why some surmise that Amari Cooper could be a potential trade candidate by the deadline, with the Chiefs having no Hollywood Brown, no Rashee Rice. Some are saying, hey, Veach should go out and get a wide receiver. Are you in the camp of, hey, if the Chiefs should go get somebody, and if so, do you like the idea of Amari Cooper? Or I know this is like a right field question, you probably weren't even prepped for this, but or if it's not Amari Cooper, is there anybody off the top of your head that would be like, this would be an intriguing situation, given the fact that the Chiefs have only $4 million in cap space? All right, before we get back to the rest of this interview, I did want to share my pick'ems for this weekend's NFL games using the best and easiest place to play fantasy sports, Underdog. They are not only offering up to $1,000 in bonus cash for new signups, but if you use code HBTC by scanning the QR code or clicking the link in the description, you'll also get a free pick featuring Joe Burrow to use as one of your pick'ems. So I would take some of your favorite pick'ems from this segment or choose some of your own and combine them with the free pick. Now, I'm rolling with DeAndre Swift's higher on 20.5 receiving yards. The Bears are working some nice screens lately, and the Jags are 31st in receiving points allowed to running backs. Then I'm rolling with Brian Thomas Jr., racking up higher than 56.5 rushing and receiving yards because he has done this in the last 3 of 4 games on receiving yards alone as Trevor Lawrence's go-to target. Next, I got to hit the lower on Jaden Daniels rushing for 50.5 yards against the Ravens. They are the #1 run defense in the NFL, and Josh Allen only scrambled for 21 against them himself after all. Then, with CJ Stroud coming off of back-to-back 300-plus yard games, and him going up against the Eagles, who give up the 9th most passing yards in the league, I got to hit the higher on 233.5 passing yards. They have to rely on him with the running back room banged up as it is. And next, with Jamar Chase averaging 132 yards a game over the last 3 weeks, that's not a typo, I have to hit the higher on his 76.5 receiving yards. So, there we go. I put $25 down on these for a chance to win 20x on my money. And whether you agree or disagree here, you can sign up using promo code HBTC to build your own pick'ems for the games this weekend. Again, any new sign up will get up to $1,000 in bonus cash plus a free pick'em in the lobby.
Yeah, so I will be coming out with, I think next week, I think I'll do a video on players that should be traded. And funny that you bring up Amari. I think Amari to the Chiefs is a perfect marriage. He's a guy on, I want to say, an expiring contract, maybe at the end of the 2025 season. But when you have that, when you have a good player that's on a deal that's either ending this year or next year, and you have a receiver needy team that's also contending for a Super Bowl, yes, I would love for Amari to go to the Chiefs. I think if the Chiefs are going to do anything, I think it would very clearly have to be for a receiver. And another player that I think would be fine if they traded for him would be the Panthers receiver Deontay Johnson, who, of course, came over from the Steelers this past offseason. And he was traded for, I want to say it was him and a 6th round pick, or him and a 7th round pick for corner Dante Jackson and a 6th round pick. It was a 6th and 7th involved. But the point is, I could see Deontay being moved from Carolina to Kansas City because all Kansas City needs is a good, able-bodied receiver for 15 to throw the ball to. And I think either Deontay or Amari would really help out the Chiefs receiving core as they push for a 3rd straight title.
Your mind is pretty in line with Chiefs Kingdom. If we're looking for like semi-affordable receivers, those are 2 of the names probably thrown out the most. And a couple of them is just like, hey, can we get a receiver on the team that can beat man coverage and just show a quick rapport with Patrick Mahomes? Like Juju just had over 100 yards. He's great zone beater. Like he's awesome with that, but he's not really getting a ton of separation in man coverage, like not like Rice was doing. And then obviously Hollywood was supposed to be there too, and he's gone. So your thoughts are in line. We'll see if the Chiefs make a move. I think if they don't, I think Brett Veach is at least calling everywhere, trying to see if he can get somebody. Sticking in the AFC North, the Ravens. This is a team that you said, hey, they might take a little bit step back, but they're absolutely still going to be a contender. I know they lost several coaches on defense. They did get Henry. I feel like just recently they're starting to click. They're 3-2. Henry has been balling out. What are your thoughts on the Ravens right now and how they are looking in the AFC? Would you have them as a top contender, or maybe not yet?
No, I absolutely would. And the thing with the Ravens is I go back to the preseason where Lamar and Derrick Henry, especially with Lamar and the financial commitment they have to him with the $250 million contract. I completely understand teams not wanting to play quarterbacks and even the top tier receivers in today's era with the amount of financial commitment that there is. So it took a little bit for the Ravens to get going. We saw a couple flashes during that week 1 game against Kansas City, but in the past 3 weeks, in weeks 3 and 4 against Dallas and Buffalo, they ran for over 270 yards as a team in each of those games. I think they toned it back to around 170 against the Bengals, which anytime you run for 170 yards as a team, you're going to take that. 270 obviously isn't sustainable every game, but over the past 3 weeks, the Ravens have went from an 0-2 team to a 3-2 team, and I think the defense will eventually even out. Right now, I want to say they're 26th in points per game. They just allowed like 450 yards to the Bengals offense. They're not going to have a receiver go for 190 and 2 scores against them every week like Jamar just did. Jamar is one of the best in the league, but
he's great.
As long as the Ravens defense can even out and get to average, which I think they have far too much talent on the defensive side of the ball to not be at least average. And I think Zach Orr, their first-year defensive coordinator, will help them get there. Yes, the Ravens to me right now, especially with how much they run the football, especially with how much they control the trenches. And the biggest thing for not when they just play the Chiefs, but for anybody is they can keep the opposing offense off the field because they can just wear you down over the course of the game, which is exactly what I thought the Ravens would do entering the season. Took a couple of weeks, but they're getting there. And the Ravens to me are the absolute number 1 threat to the Chiefs right now.
That's where I land. Also with that team, I feel like they're looking great. Derrick Henry is who they were hoping he would be, incorporating him into that dual threat, not with another running back per se, even though they've got some other dogs over there, but with Lamar Jackson. You did just mention the Buffalo Bills. I feel like the Bills have come back down to reality a little bit after playing 3 not great teams to start the season. I think they're off back-to-back losses and been a little bit ugly, but what are your thoughts on the Bills? Is your stock still high? For clarity, you said, in a couple months ago when we did our first interview about the AFC, we both were not fully bought in on the Bills just because of some of the moves that happened with Diggs gone. Obviously, with Josh Allen, they're always in the picture at least, but with them falling 2 games in a row, what are your thoughts on them and just the state of how they are looking?
So with the Bills game, or with the Bills-Ravens game, which was in week 3, Baltimore beat them 35-10, like we just said, 270 plus yards of rushing. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't put too much stock into that one for the Bills because they had 4 or 5 defensive starters out. They're one of the best linebackers in football. Matt Milano is out with an indefinite injury. There is no timeline for him, although I don't think it was officially season ending. I think there's a chance if they make the playoffs that I think he could come back. They were also missing, I want to say, Taron Johnson, Ed Oliver. At least they were missing Ed Oliver in the Texans game. And when you have 5 defensive starters out like the Bills did against the Texans, it's going to be tough sledding. I still think Buffalo is going to be fine. And right now, with the way their season has started, I think the Bills and Bengals are kind of opposite of what we thought they were going to be, where the Bills are like, we thought the Bills were going to be retooling. They might go 9-8 this year, maybe a 7 seed, but I still think they can win the division. I think they can be a top 4 seed in the conference. Wouldn't surprise me if they win 11 games. And the Bengals are kind of the opposite, where they're looking up. And I think some people thought that the Bills would be looking up and that the Jets would kind of take over the division this year. I think I was included in that, by the way. But with Buffalo now, I think they're a very good team, But I think the problem with the Bills is, at least for the sake of their Super Bowl chances, is I don't think they're a great team. And they're going to be a tough team to beat, especially when you have Josh Allen, James Cook in the same backfield. I mean, Josh can make nothing. He can make anything out of nothing. I think he's the second best quarterback in the league. I don't think that should be a debate, but I just don't think they're a great team. And I think whenever they run into a Chiefs, maybe whenever they run into a Ravens, that's going to be their inevitable playoff departure.
And it looks like, I was just double checking it, James Cook might not be playing this week, which is unfortunate because I know they've been using him quite a bit in Buffalo's offense. Are you concerned about, like, Josh Allen just came off of it's probably a fluky game, but he had a 30% completion percentage, which was not great. I mean, are you concerned at all about the offensive side of the ball? I know we mentioned injuries on the defense, but is that a concern, or is it more like, nah, that was just a pretty fluky game, all things considered?
For Josh specifically at this point in his career, I think he's earned the one game, shake it off, he'll be fine. Now, if it was like a younger quarterback like a Will Levis, then yes, that would be concerning. But I think Josh he'll be fine. I know the 9 of 30 that's awful. But even within the Texans game, there was a play where Josh he was drilled. And some people were saying that like he looked concussed immediately. And that was obviously not an ideal situation to be on the road against another AFC team with a quarterback that was down after one play after a very, very hard hit. But I think Josh has definitely earned the right as the player that he's going to be fine. He'll work through it, and he might post a bad stat line here or there, but you take the bad with the good with Josh Allen. And the reality is anytime you have a 3-game stretch of at Baltimore, at Houston, and then at the Jets on Monday night in a 3-week span, even for the Chiefs, that's going to be tough. That's going to be a tough stretch for anybody. And I think there is a chance that Buffalo can still beat the Jets. And if they can improve to 4-2, then I think I think that would look even better, because then they would have a really big lead in the AFC East, because the Jets would fall to 2-4, and they would also have the head-to-head over them. So I think Buffalo's going to be fine, and I think Josh will be fine as well. Just very much take the bad with the good with him.
And I hope from like a health perspective of Josh Allen, like he's all good. It was pretty weird. You mentioned it, but like he went limp after his head hit. A doctor broke down on YouTube, like if you're not out cold, you're not letting your wrist do this on the ground and drag this way. You're trying to brace the opposite direction. And so it looked like Josh Allen was out cold, came back in. I just hope he's all right. And I would not be surprised if there's some sort of follow-up about that whole situation. Either way, I was going to talk about another opponent in their division, which you just brought him up, was the Jets. I'm just looking at that division. Like, the Dolphins are out right now to me because of Tua. I don't know when he's coming back. The Patriots are not great, to say the least. We don't even need to talk about them in this video as contenders. But the Jets, where are you at on them? I know you said a couple months ago, like, hey, this is still a team to watch, the Jets with Aaron Rodgers back. And honestly, it's been hit or miss. They're in disarray right now with the recent firing of Saleh. Nate Hackett's not calling the plays anymore. Their DC is now the interim head coach, which I don't really know how that helps the offense. You fire a defensive-minded head coach. The interim head coach is the DC. What are your thoughts on the Jets? And you did mention, like, hey, I think the Bills could have a real chance to win this division, but what are your thoughts on how they are looking given all that's happened to them recently?
So I just did a video on the Jets. I recommend going to check it out. But the future scares me for the Jets, because right now it does not matter about the 2025 draft, the 2026 draft. The Jets are all in. They didn't trade Aaron Rodgers to say, all right, guys, let's go 9-8, hopefully win a playoff game and send everybody home, because we made the playoffs for the first time in 15 years. This team has the longest playoff drought in the NFL right now. They went and got a 4-time league MVP, and I commend them for doing so. But now we're at a point where the offense isn't good. They've put up over 270 yards of offense just once in 5 games, which, by the way, was against the Patriots, who, like you said, are not a good team. And I think what's even more concerning with the Jets this year is I thought Breece Hall was going to be in the Offensive Player of the Year conversation, but he's not having a good year at all. I mean, it's just constant stuff after stuff. And even the rookie Braylon Allen, who's like 245 pounds, he's looking all right. But there's a couple of games already where the Jets have beat themselves. And you did mention that Nathaniel Hackett's not calling plays anymore, but they replaced him with Todd Downing, who was the Titans offensive coordinator during Malik Willis's rookie season back in 2022. So I think there's even some concern with Todd Downing. It's not an upgrade by any means, or at least not a substantial upgrade. So I do worry with the Jets, and where I thought they would have some stability at the running back position, Garrett Wilson being better than what he has. Because believe it or not, Garrett Wilson's catch percentage from passes from Aaron Rodgers this year is only 2% better than what it was with the hodgepodge of guys they had last year. So you would have thought that that 56% that Garrett Wilson was catching passes at last year would go up to 65 or 68, and that he could be in the offensive player of the year conversation, but we haven't seen it. And I broke all of this down because the Jets play calls right now, they're a lot of, it's just not great. It's a lot of short fades, a lot of deep fades. They're not really calling plays to help out anybody in the offense the way that they could. So when it goes back to this with the Jets and the fact that they are all in, I really think they're in a situation where they have to trade for Davante Adams, because the picks don't matter to GM Joe Douglas if you're not around to be in a position to make those picks, because I also think his job is on the line. So whatever the cost is, go get Davante Adams to give yourself a fighting chance.
Before we moved on from the Jets, I was actually, if you didn't bring it up, going to say, hey, what are the odds in your opinion that you think Davante Adams does end up a Jet? Like, your confidence level on a scale of 1 to 10, is it pretty high right now, just given the fact that you said, hey, they're all in. It's not the future right now or long term that they're concerned about. It's the here and now this season.
I would say I would put the Jets percent to get Davante Adams at 50%, and then the rest of the NFL combined at 50%. Now, obviously, some teams like the Chiefs, just because, the division and all that, and I get that from the Raiders part, but I would put the Jets at 50% right now, because it doesn't matter. Like, you're all in. You have to go. You have to try for it.
As far as contenders go, and the rest of the AFC, just glancing, I feel like we need to talk about the Texans briefly. I'd love your thoughts also staying in that division on the Colts. And then, before we get to the AFC West, I'm curious your thoughts on the Texans, how they're looking, because they're 4-1. I mean, that's the second best record in the AFC right now, aside from the Chiefs. What are your thoughts on the Texans and how they are shaping up and looking right now?
Yeah, so the Texans they're playing really good ball. Their only loss, by the way, have to brag because I can, and I don't get that opportunity often. Their only loss was to the Minnesota Vikings, and it wasn't a 3-point loss. We beat them by 27 points. They went to the bank. They found out who the real team in the NFC is. And jokes aside, the Texans are a really good team, and they've done this without the stability at the running back position. They've had Cam Akers play this year. They've had Dameon Pierce miss multiple games, who is the backup running back, and Joe Mixon was the starter. He's missed multiple games. So they've done this with running back 3 and 4, and their running back 4, I want to say, is Dare Ungubwal. I think I definitely messed it up. Dare Ungubwal. Yes. So they've done it with They've done it with running backs 3 and 4, and they're still putting up consistent points. Now, it does hurt them that Nico Collins is out for the next couple of weeks, but the thing with the Texans is their defense, led by DeMeco Ryans, is going to be good enough to the point where they're not going to be, at least most of the time, in 34-31 shootouts. They're not going to be in those types of games where, hey, CJ, you don't have one of the best receivers in the league, go put up 30-plus points. And I know CJ Stroud's expectations entering the year were what I would say was a tad unfair at times, but anytime you can help out a young quarterback by having a good defense the way that the Texans can, they have a really good edge duo in Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter. And Kamari Lassiter, their second-round pick, was a player that I had concerns with entering the year, but he has played tremendously to start the year. Derek Stingley is, of course, Derek Stingley. And this defense is really, really good. So the Texans, as long as they can stay healthy, Joe Mixon played really good back in week 1 against the Colts. As long as they can stay healthy, they're definitely a threat in the AFC.
You just mentioned the team, Colts. They're a weird team to me, but Flacco's been looking good. Are you high on them at all? Or is it like, I'm not sure based on the 5 games I've seen so far this season?
So the frustrating thing there was a tweet a couple weeks ago. It was Anthony Richardson. It was something like Anthony Richardson is the most frustrating quarterback ever because it's Russian roulette in terms of what pass is going to leave his arm. It might be a ball that hits Michael Pittman between the numbers. It might be to the person in the second row. So the Colts right now, I think they're going to be all right. And like you said, Flacco has played well. Flacco is a really solid player. He has a really solid floor. Now, he's not going to be, a top 2 or 3 quarterback in the conference at this point in his career, but he has a really solid floor where he's going to do his job. So if AR does get hurt, they're going to be able to, rise to that floor of Flacco. And Joe played on a team last week against the Jags where they put up 34 points on the road and unfortunately lost. And this is why I'm not buying in with the Colts, at least right now, is because of Gus Bradley on defense. That defense is just frustrating, and they gave up 37 points last week to the Jags. Trevor Lawrence, I've voiced my concerns about on both Twitter and YouTube this year. Trevor at times is borderline Daniel Jones-esque, and there were a couple plays within the Bills game for Trevor that was just flat out bad. But for Trevor to go from completing like 53 or 54% of his passes in weeks 1 through 4 to, I'm not exaggerating here, over 80% of his passes in week 5 against the Colts, for a team you play twice a year and for a team that you know how good they are, that's very, very concerning. So right now I'm out on the Colts. If they win enough games to get to the 7 seed, I hate to sound like this, I hate to be a doomer about this, but it doesn't matter to me because the defense is that concerning week in and week out. Now I will say, just last thing, that the Colts they've had a lot of injuries on defense, but Gus Bradley to me is a big concern regardless of a healthy defense or not.
All right. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with the Colts. I'm out at this point in time after 5 weeks. But with that being said, I'd love to hear your thoughts just quickly. I don't think we need to spend very long on it here. AFC West through 5 games, or 5 weeks rather. Broncos have won a few in a row. Chargers, I mean, I like them as far as like their coaching staff and moves they made, but they're pretty banged up right now. Raiders, QB controversy, might trade Adams. Do you feel like there's any of these teams that are going to end up in the playoffs? Where are you at with these guys before we move on to the final segment?
The Raiders just know. Going into the year with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell, to me, has played out exactly the way that we thought it would. Unfortunately, unfortunately for them, Davante Adams decided that he's just done with the organization. So that's not fortunate for the Raiders, but even if Davante's playing, that's not going to change who your quarterbacks were entering the year. I thought that was a bad plan to begin with, and 5 weeks in, it hasn't played out well at all. With the Broncos, the defense has been phenomenal. Shout out Vance Joseph, and I think there's a chance that they may beat the Chiefs. We saw it last year, but in terms of like true threat, I don't think the Broncos are a true threat. I mean, Bo Nix. He's a rookie quarterback, although he played well last week, and he's improved as the season has went on so far. But in terms of actual like threats in the AFC, are they going to win a playoff game? I don't think so. The Chargers, I like the culture they're building. I like the foundation they're building. For me right now, the talent on the roster is lacking to go into a Baltimore, a Houston, a Buffalo, and actually win one of those games. And it's not a hot take to say the Chargers or any of the other teams are going to win the division. So no, I don't think any of them are going to win a playoff game. Maybe they sneak in as a 7, but I think if the Chargers or Broncos would sneak in, I think they would be a wild card exit.
I saw a pretty funny post yesterday. I think they posted like the AFC seed standings as of right now, and 3 teams out of the AFC West were in the playoff picture, which I just laughed at. So I was like, that's not going to stay there. There's no, or if it is, if one of them sneaks in, like, I don't see how at this point in time. I know I'm biased, but I don't see how they make a deep playoff run. No. With all that being said, I'd love to hear maybe your tier list of 3 to 5 teams in the AFC. I don't know if you want to rank them or if you're just saying, hey, if I had to put money on these 3, 4, 5 teams either making deep playoff run or being in the Super Bowl based on how it's looked, here's who I would put money on.
Yeah, so I mean, we have to start with Kansas City. They've earned it. Back-to-back champs, 5-0, haven't played their best football yet, and they're entering their bye undefeated. Hopefully get a little healthier. I know the season-long stuff isn't going to matter, but hopefully they look a little better coming out of the bye, and they entered the bye looking good against New Orleans. But after that, with how I think the game will translate in January, for me, I know they're 3-2 and they're not the second best team. The run game is what matters a lot in the postseason, and that's why I'm going to have Baltimore at number 2. When you have Lamar and Henry in the backfield rolling, that is a team nobody wants to play. Nobody is signing up for that, whether it's 0 degrees, 7 degrees, -5. Nobody wants to play that. So I would have Baltimore at 2. After that, I would have Houston at 3. Although I think they're slightly above Buffalo. I don't think there's a big gap. I think it's right now Kansas City, Baltimore, Houston / Buffalo. And then number 5, that's a tough one. It's going to be nobody from the West. No disrespect there. I would probably say, oh man, I want to say Cincy.
You're going to say Cincinnati because that's I'm saying the same.
I'd have to say Cincy, just because I think the defense. I just refuse to believe the defense is going to be almost just not generationally, but just one of the worst defenses in the past 3 or 4 years. I refuse to think that they're going to be that bad all year long, and I think they'll eventually not go up to top 10, but at least be close to average. And I think that they'll eventually kind of figure things out a little bit. So I would put Cincy at 5, and then the Jets would probably be at 6.
And I know Chiefs fans are going to hear that, and I'm just going to give my thoughts onto why I said Cincy. They're going to hear that and be like, yeah, freaking right, they're 1-4. Well, here's the thing. All the Bengals, in my eyes, have to do is make it there. If they make it there, it's single round elimination anybody's game. And if the Bengals make it far, like they match up really well for whatever reason every single time against the Kansas City Chiefs. So I think it's an uphill battle for them, but I'm just looking at the AFC. It's only 5 weeks. The Bengals start out slow every single year. I mean, sure, here's the thing. You really going to say, oh yeah, the Steelers are going to get there? Like, I don't know about that. Like, yeah, they're 3-2. Their defense is the real deal. But like, if you had to choose between, I don't know, the Steelers and Bengals, like I'm probably going with Joe Burrow and company. Jamar Chase is insane right now. I mean, they look really good on offense. They got to figure it out on defense. But Lou Anarumo, for what it's worth, Bengals fans probably hate him right now. He's a really good DC. I think they're going to figure at least enough out to maybe be a threat later down the road. Do I think they're going to win the Super Bowl or anything? No, I don't think so. But I cannot right now, just so all the Chiefs fans know, I cannot right now write them off given the fact that they've started out slow every single freaking year, and they almost, if Joe Burrow stays healthy, find a way to get back to the postseason.
I couldn't agree more, and that's why. Like, I know they're 1-4, but they play the Giants and Browns the next 2 weeks. I think they'll be 3-4 after that. They play the Eagles in Week 8. They're going through their struggles right now. Their head coach is on the hot seat, Nick Sirianni. So 21 days from now, or I guess 24 days from now after Week 8, very, very easily they could be 4-4 back to 500, and the 1-4 days are long gone. So I couldn't agree more with that.
Garrett, thanks so much for your time, man. Where can people find you, follow you? I'll throw everything in the description for them. I know you've got, I guess I'm answering this a little bit, but you got YouTube, you got Twitter. I'll link those. Is there anything else you want people to know? Anything you got coming out? Anything they should see, watch?
Yeah, so I just, like Cole said, football analysis, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. I just started an Instagram recently. Post a lot of shorts on there. I know Cole posts a lot of shorts on the gram as well. So I'm just trying to build that up. But that's it. And in a couple of weeks, we'll have couple of rookie videos coming out, and there's a lot of good content coming out. And even like we alluded to earlier, trade candidates, which the Chiefs will absolutely be discussed in that video as they push for an unprecedented third straight title.
Well, I'll just give you an endorsement too, man. Like, I don't know if you just sit there and study all day, but I don't know anybody. I don't know much people more knowledgeable than you.
I appreciate it.
That's on YouTube, because I know the grind of YouTube, like how long it takes to research, script a video, but then edit it, and your videos are well edited, and you still have seemingly a lot of time that you have poured into research and study because you know your stuff. So definitely go check out his channel if you're looking for solid NFL content, because that is exactly what it is.
I appreciate that. Thank you for having me, Cole.
How about those Chiefs?